Hi there, friends, and welcome to this edition of the Counselor's Bookshelf. Let's take a moment to roll up our sleeves and take a closer look at a book I'd like to recommend to you called Hinds Feet on High Places. Students are always asking me for book recommendations. Just this week in my internship class, they asked me to share this in the chat when I was referencing it, so I'm going to hold it up to the camera so you can see it. It's called Hinds Feet on High Places by Hannah Hurnard. And it is an allegory, and it is one of my favorite books. It's one that I've read and reread and could read many times over again. And I'm not sure I can say that for many other books, if any. Maybe there may be one or two. I'll have to give it some thought. But it's a very rare occasion that I want to read and reread a book. So let's dive in and take a moment to talk about this book, Hinds Feet on High Places. And let me start with asking you a question. Have you ever felt stuck before? Maybe you felt like fear, insecurity may be holding you back from the life that you know you're meant to live? Well, then this book may be for you. Or if you feel like you're on a journey of becoming the person that God has called you to be, and maybe you're just walking through some valleys and hills and trying to just struggle through. Maybe things aren't going as planned. That tends to happen a lot, right? Then this book is for you. So in Hinds Feet on High Places, we follow the main character. Her name is Much Afraid. And Much Afraid grew up in the Fearing clan, and she lives in the Valley of Humiliation. She struggles with her anxiety and fear, and the voices from her family and others around her that reinforce those fears. But there is a pivotal moment where everything changes for Much Afraid, and that is when the shepherd, the great shepherd, issues an invitation to her, and he invites her on a journey to the high places. And these high places represent, of course, growth and healing and transformation along her journey. But there is a bit of a plot twist. Much Afraid doesn't go on this journey all alone by herself. She is given two companions. And these companions are actually somewhat unlikely companions, meaning they're not companions that she would have chosen for herself. The companions that the shepherd gives her are the companions of sorrow and suffering. And at first, it's really painful for Much Afraid, and she resists it. But along the journey of becoming, her companions, sorrow and suffering, become pivotal and play pivotal roles in sort of reshaping her personhood, her character, and building resilience and courage along her journey. From a counseling perspective, this story really reflects the beautiful journey of growth. We often talk about the metaphor where the caterpillar becomes a butterfly. So, it's really quite the journey of discovery, of growth, of healing. She has to face her internal critic along the journey. She also has to let go of the reins of control. She has to learn to trust the process, even during times when it's very, very uncomfortable to trust the process. And in the end, I won't give too much away, but she goes through this transformation, and she's no longer defined by the same things that defined her when she started her journey. And she gains important characteristics along the way. And so let me share with you one of my favorite passages. It's a conversation between Much Afraid and the Great Shepherd. Let's see. I'll start a little before that. It says, poor Much Afraid was, of course, overwhelmed with horror at the mere idea, but her relatives always terrified her. She had never learned to resist or ignore their threats, so she simply sat cowering before them, repeating again and again that nothing would induce her to marry craven fear. But she was quite unable to escape from their presence. The unhappy interview therefore lasted a long time, and when finally they did leave her for a while, it was already early evening. With a surge of relief, Much Afraid remembered that the chief shepherd would then be leading his flocks to their accustomed watering place beside a lovely cascade and pool on the outskirts of the village. To this place she was in the habit of going very early every morning to meet him and learn his wishes and commands for the day, and again in the evenings to give her report on the day's work. It was now time to meet him there beside the pool, and she felt sure he would help her and not permit her relatives to kidnap her and force her to leave his service for the dreadful slavery of marriage with Craven Fear. Still shaking with fear and without pausing to wash the tears from her face, Much Afraid shut the door of the cottage and started off for the cascade and the pool. The quiet evening light was filling the Valley of Humiliation with a golden glow as she left the village and started to cross the fields. Beyond the river, the mountains, which bounded the eastern side of the valley, like towering ramparts, were already tinged with pink, and their deep gorges were filled with lovely and mysterious shadows. Through the quiet and peace of this tranquil evening, poor, terrified, Much Afraid came to the pool where the shepherd was waiting for her, and told him of her dreadful plight. "What shall I do?" she cried at the end of the recital. "How can I escape? They can't really force me to marry my cousin Craven, can they? Oh," she cried, overwhelmed again at the very thought of such a prospect. "It's dreadful enough to be Much Afraid, but to think of having to be Miss Craven Fear for the rest of my life, never able to escape from the torment of it, is more than I can bear." "Don't be afraid," said the shepherd gently. "You're in my service, and if you will trust me, they will not be able to force you against your will into any family alliance. But you ought never to have let your fearing relatives into your cottage, because they are enemies of the king, who has taken you into his employment." "I know, oh, I know," cried Much Afraid, "but whenever I meet any of my relatives, I seem to lose all my strength and simply cannot resist them, no matter how I strive. As long as I live in the valley, I cannot escape meeting them. They're everywhere. And now that they are determined to get me into their power again, I shall never dare venture outside my cottage alone for fear of being kidnapped." As she spoke, she lifted her eyes and looked across the valley and the river to the lovely sunset-lighted peaks of the mountains, then cried out in desperate longing, "Oh, if only I could escape from the Valley of Humiliation altogether and go to the high places, completely out of reach of all the Fearings and my other relatives." No sooner were these words uttered, when to her complete astonishment the shepherd answered, "I have waited a long time to hear you make that suggestion, Much Afraid. It would indeed be best for you to leave the valley for the high places, and I will very willingly take you there myself. The lower slopes of those mountains on the other side of the river are the borderland of my father's kingdom, the realm of love. No fears of any kind are able to live there, because perfect love casteth out fear and everything that torments." Much Afraid stared at him in amazement. "Go to the high places?" she exclaimed, "and live there? Oh, if only I could! For months past the longing has never left me. I think of it day and night, but it's not possible. I could never get there. I'm too lame." She looked down at her malformed feet as she spoke, and her eyes again filled with tears and despair and self-pity. "These mountains are so steep and dangerous. I've been told that only the hinds and the deer can move on them safely." "It's quite true that the way up to the high places is both difficult and dangerous," said the shepherd. "It has to be, so that nothing which is an enemy of love can make the ascent and invade the kingdom. Nothing blemished or in any way imperfect is allowed there, and the inhabitants of the high places do need hinds' feet. I have them myself," he added, with a smile. "And like a young hart or a roebuck, I can go leaping on the mountains and skipping on the hills with the greatest ease and pleasure. But Much Afraid, I could make yours like hinds' feet also, and set you upon the high places. You could serve me then much more fully and be out of reach of all your enemies. I am delighted to hear that you have been longing to go there, for as I said before, I have been waiting for you to make that suggestion." Then he added, with another smile, "You would never have to meet Craven Fear again." Much Afraid stared at him in bewilderment. "Make my feet like hinds' feet?" she repeated. "How is that possible? And what would the inhabitants of the kingdom of love say to the presence of a wretched little cripple with an ugly face and a twisted mouth, if nothing blemished and imperfect may dwell there?" "It's true," said the shepherd, "that you would have to be changed before you could live on the high places. But if you're willing to go with me, I promise to help you develop hinds' feet. Up there on the mountains as you go near the real high places, the air is fresh and invigorating. It strengthens the whole body, and there are streams with wonderful healing properties, so that those who bathe in them find all their blemishes and disfigurements washed away. But there's another thing I must tell you." This is where it gets really good, guys. Lean in. "Not only would I have to make your feet like hinds' feet, but you would have to receive another name. For it would be impossible for a much afraid to enter the kingdom of love as for any other member of the fearing family. Are you willing to be changed completely, much afraid? And to be made like the new name, which you will receive if you become a citizen in the kingdom of love?" She nodded her head and then said very earnestly, "Yes, I am." Again he smiled, but added gravely, "There's still one thing more, the most important of all. Here it is. No one is allowed to dwell in the kingdom of love unless they have the flower of love already blooming in their hearts. Has love been planted in your heart, much afraid?" As the shepherd said this, he looked at her very steadily, and she realized that his eyes were searching into her very depths, the very depths of her heart. And she knew all that was there, and he knew all that was there far better than she did herself. She did not answer for a long time, because she was not sure what to say, but she looked rather flinchingly into the eyes which were gazing at her so penetratingly, and became aware that they had the power of reflecting what they looked upon. She could thus really see her own heart as he saw it. So after a long pause, she answered, "I think that what is growing there is a great longing to experience the joy of natural human love, and to learn to love supremely one person who will love me in return. But perhaps that desire, natural and right as it seems, is not the love of which you are speaking." She paused and then added honestly and almost tremblingly, "I see the longing to be loved and admired growing in my heart, shepherd, but I don't think I see the kind of love that you're talking about, at least nothing like the love which I see in you." "Then will you let me plant the seed of true love there now?" asked the shepherd. "It will take you some time to develop hinds' feet and to climb to the high places, and if I put the seed in your heart now, it will be ready to bloom by the time you get there." Much Afraid shrank back. "I'm afraid," she said. "I've been told that if you really love someone, you give them, that loved one, the power to hurt and pain you in a way nothing else can." "That is true," agreed the shepherd. "To love does mean to put yourself into the power of the loved one and to become very vulnerable to pain. And you are very much afraid of pain, are you not?" She nodded miserably and then said shamefacedly, "Yes, very much afraid of it." "But it's happy to love," said the shepherd quietly. "It's happy to love even if you are not loved in return. There's pain too, certainly, but love does not think that very significant." Much Afraid thought suddenly that he had the most patient eyes she had ever seen. At the same time, there was something in them that hurt her to the heart. Though she could not have said why, but she still shrank back in fear and said, bringing the words out very quickly because somehow she was ashamed to say them, "I would never dare to love unless I were sure of being loved in return. If I let you plant the seed of love in my heart, will you give me the promise that I shall be loved in return? I couldn't bear it otherwise." The smile he turned on her then was the grandest and kindest she had ever seen. Yet once again, for the same indefinable reason as before, It cut her to the quick. "Yes," he said without hesitation, "I promise you, much afraid, that when the plant of love is ready to bloom in your heart, and when you are ready to change your name, then you will be loved in return." It gets better and better from here, really. It gets more and more beautiful as you continue on the journey. I want to keep reading to you, but we're at about 15 minutes and it's probably a good stopping point. So, are you going to read Hinds Feet on High Places? You can also listen to the audiobook or get the ebook, start reading right away on your phone or mobile device. When we think about Much Afraid in the allegory, I think about the brain and how in the limbic system, the amygdala is really that area that's activated with fear. But there's also the thalamus that's deeply embedded here in the medial part. And when it comes to the thalamus is associated with emotion regulation and arousal, consciousness, sleepfulness, wakefulness. And it's involved in sharing that information with other regions of the brain. And so the prefrontal cortex, though, is the front part of the brain. The PFC is the executive command center of the brain. This is the boss in your brain, also known as the cop in the rearview mirror, the teacher in the classroom. And remember, the brain develops from bottom to top when we're going through our stages of development. And so the brain stem develops first, and the prefrontal cortex is the last thing to develop. The joke is that rental car companies were the ones that understood this because they charged a premium for anybody under 25 years old that wanted to rent a car because they tended to have more accidents. Their PFC wasn't fully developed, so sometimes the executive command center, that is the cop in your rearview mirror that helps you go the speed limit, or within a range of the speed limit, right, is not as fully developed. So it's been said that spirituality is also housed in this part of the brain. So this is the part of the brain that, again, the boss in your brain, that helps you stay on track with your values, that helps you stay on track with what's important to you, with your goals. And so I think that as you read an allegory like Hinds Feet on High Places, that represents this this journey of becoming who Much Afraid was created to be, I hope you'll find that it brings moments for pause and reflection and gives you some concepts to contemplate, to help establish those neural pathways from the thalamus to the prefrontal cortex, to help promote more emotion regulation and less fear overall. So I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Counselor's Bookshelf. Let me know if you decide to read Hinds Feet on High Places. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it and chat more about it. Thank you for taking the time to watch today. And I look forward to hearing your thoughts and your contemplations of these concepts. God bless you. Until next time.